Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a story from Her Silent Revenge, and it has taken a turn you absolutely didn't expect. Let's begin.
My family sent me to prison for 3 years, taking the fall for a building collapse my brother caused one that killed 3 innocent people. In court, my father looked at me and said coldly, "You've always been jealous of him." My brother leaned close and whispered, "Now you pay." For 3 years behind bars, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I refused every visit. I did only one thing: I prepared. And the morning those prison gates opened, his empire began to crack. I'm incredibly grateful you're here. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I'm building a global map of listeners, and I want your city on it. Quick note, this story weaves powerful lessons with fictionalized drama for emotional impact and reflection. Any resemblance to actual people or events, purely coincidental. But the message I'm sharing with you, that's yours to keep and carry forward. The concrete is cold beneath my fingertips. I press the edge of a plastic spork stolen from breakfast 3 months ago, sharpened against the floor every night since, into the wall beside my bunk. The scraping sound is soft rhythmic. It's become a kind of meditation. 1095, the last mark. I step back and stare at the grid I've carved into the gray concrete over 3 years. 5 marks, then a diagonal slash. Repeat, repeat, repeat. 219 groups. Every single day I've been locked inside Lincoln Correctional Center, I've added a line. Every single day I've reminded myself why I'm here. Not because I'm guilty, because my family wanted me gone. The fluorescent light above my head flickers. It's January in central Illinois, which means the heating system barely works, and the windows fog over by dawn. My cellmate, Rosa Martinez, is still asleep on the top bunk, one tattooed arm draped over the side. She's doing 8 years for armed robbery. She's the closest thing I've had to a friend in here. I run my thumb over the final mark. The plaster dust clings to my skin. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., I walk out of here. And tomorrow afternoon, Holden Bradford's entire world starts to collapse. I sit on the edge of my bunk and pull the notebook out from under my mattress. 127 pages. I've called it the playbook in my head, though the cover just says legal notes in block letters. It's taken me 3 years to write. Every motion Nathan will file. Every account will freeze. Every lie Holden told that I'm going to unravel line by line until there's nothing left of him but the truth. I flip through it one last time. Phase 1. Freeze assets. Emergency motion. File within 6 hours of release. Phase 2. Expose the design theft. Timestamps on the cloud server. Original blueprints. The award that should have been mine. Phase 3. Cite evidence. Concrete samples. Inspector Douglas Myers' bribe, $85,000 wired in 3 installments. I know every word by heart now. I've read this notebook so many times the pages are soft as fabric, but I can't take it with me. Prison rules, no papers leave except through official mail, and even then, they're copied, scanned, logged. I'm not giving the guards a roadmap to what I'm about to do, so I'm gonna burn it. At 7:30, the intercom crackles. Bradford, phone call. I glance up at Rosa. She's awake now, sitting on the edge of her bunk, braiding her hair. "Your lawyer," she asks. "Yeah." She nods. "Good luck out there, Delaney." I meet her eyes. Rosa's not a talker, but she's solid. She watched my back when I first got here and didn't know how things worked. She kept quiet when I spent hours in the library studying case law and engineering reports. She never asked what I was planning. "Thanks," I say. "Don't come back." I almost smile. I won't. The phone bank is a row of scratched plastic booths along the corridor. I pick up the receiver and punch in Nathan's number. It rings twice. Delaney. His voice is sharp-focused. Nathan Cross is 42 Harvard Law and the only attorney who answered my letters when I was first locked up. He didn't believe I was guilty. He believed I'd been framed. And he was right. "Nathan, tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. "I'll be there," he says. "Everything's ready. The motions are drafted. Dr. Cartwright has the financial forensics queued up. As soon as you're out, we file." I close my eyes. I can see it so clearly. Holden at his desk in the corner office that used to be mine, sipping coffee, scrolling through emails. And then his assistant walks in with an emergency court notice. All corporate accounts frozen pending investigation, effective immediately. He's not going to see it coming, I say quietly. He's an idiot if he doesn't, Nathan replies. You've got 15 minutes on this call. Walk me through phase 1 again. I need to make sure we're airtight. I do. I recite the filing strategy, the account numbers, the legal precedents. Nathan takes notes. He asks 3 questions. I answer all of them. When the automated voice cuts in, 2 minutes remaining, he says, Get some sleep tonight, Delaney. Tomorrow we go to war. I've been at war for 3 years, I tell him. Tomorrow I just start winning. I hang up before he can reply. Back in the cell, I tear the pages out of the notebook one by one. Rose is standing by the door, arms crossed, watching the corridor. Anyone coming? I ask. You're clear, she says. Make it fast. I kneel beside the small metal trash can we're allowed to keep under the sink. I pull out the lighter. I traded 2 weeks' worth of commissary snacks for a little green Bic, barely any fluid left. I flick it once, twice. The flame catches. I touch it to the corner of the first page. The paper curls, blackens. The ink runs. 3 years of planning turning to ash. I feed the pages in slowly, one at a time, letting each one burn before I add the next. The smoke is thin, acrid. Rosa coughs once, but doesn't move from her post. When the last page is gone, I crush the ashes with my palm and flush them down the toilet. Rosa turns back to me. Feel better. Yeah, I say, and I mean it. Everything I need is in my head now. Every date, every name, every number. I don't need the notebook anymore. I only needed the discipline of writing it down. That night, I lie on my bunk and stare at the ceiling. The prison is never truly quiet. There are always footsteps, voices, the clang of metal doors. But tonight it feels different. Tomorrow I walk out of here. Tomorrow, Holden Bradford will learn what 3 years of planning looks like. He thought prison would break me. He thought I'd come out weak, desperate, ready to beg for forgiveness. He thought he'd won. He was wrong. I close my eyes and picture his face. My brother. The man who sabotaged a construction site and let 3 innocent workers die. The man who forged my signature and framed me for manslaughter. The man my parents stood beside in court while I sat alone at the defense table. He has no idea what's coming, but he will. Before you hear how I destroy him, you need to understand how I got here. You need to know how I built an empire from nothing, how I became one of the most respected architects in Chicago, how I trusted my family, and how they betrayed me. 7 years ago, I had everything. My name is Delaney Bradford, and I'm an architect. Or at least I was. I graduated from MIT in May of 2015 with a master's in architecture and a portfolio that made 3 firms in Boston try to recruit me before I'd even walked across the stage. I turned them all down. I wanted to go home to Chicago. I wanted to build something of my own. My father didn't come to the ceremony. My mother did. She sat in the 3rd row, smiled when they called my name, and took a photo on her phone. But that night, back at the hotel, my father called. I could hear him through the wall of my mother's room. It's a shame she wasn't born a son, Patricia. A son would have taken over the firm. I was 24 years old. I just earned a graduate degree from one of the best schools in the world. And my father's first thought was that I'd been born the wrong gender. I didn't cry, I got angry. And I decided I'd build something so successful he'd have no choice but to see me. I started Bradford and Associates in the fall of 2016, working out of the garage at my parents' estate in Lake Forest. My father had retired 2 years earlier, closing down the small residential firm he'd run for 30 years. The garage still had his old drafting table, a faded blueprint of a house he'd designed in 1987, and a space heater that barely worked. I didn't care. I had a laptop, a phone, and a dream. My first client was a boutique hotel owner in Wicker Park. She wanted to renovate a century-old building into something modern but warm with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. I worked 16-hour days for 3 months. When the project finished, she cried. She said it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. She referred me to 2 other clients. By 2018, I'd moved out of the garage and into a small office in Streeterville overlooking the Chicago River. I had 4 employees. I had 12 active projects. I had a reputation, and I had my brother's attention. Holden Bradford is 3 years older than me. He studied architecture at the University of Illinois, not MIT, not even close, and spent his 20s bouncing between mid-level firms, never quite making partner, never quite standing out. When I opened Bradford and Associates, he congratulated me over dinner and said he was proud. 2 years later, he asked if he could join the firm. I should have said no. But he was my brother, and my parents had been asking me every Sunday dinner whether I'd thought about bringing Holden on board. My father said it in that careful, disappointed way he always used when he talked to me. My mother said it while pouring wine, her voice soft and apologetic as if she were asking me to forgive her for something. So I said yes. Holden joined Bradford and Associates in January of 2019. I gave him the title of Senior Associate. I gave him his own office. I gave him 3 projects to manage. Within 6 months, I realized he wasn't good. He missed deadlines. He alienated clients with his arrogance. He made design choices that didn't work structurally, aesthetically, financially, and then blamed the engineers when things went wrong. I spent more time fixing his mistakes than I did on my own work, but I didn't fire him, because every time I thought about it, I'd hear my father's voice in my head, "Family comes first, Delaney." Sunday dinners at the Lake Forest estate were a Bradford family tradition. My mother cooked roast chicken or prime rib. My father opened a bottle of wine from his collection. Holden brought his wife, Vanessa. Owen, my younger brother, usually showed up late still in his work boots from whatever construction site he'd been consulting on that week. I went because I felt obligated, but I stopped enjoying it. One night in the spring of 2020, I excused myself to use the bathroom and walked past my father's study. The door was cracked open. I heard voices inside. "Holden should be leading the firm," my father said. "He's older, he's a man, clients respect that." "She built it, Richard," my mother replied. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. "She got lucky," my father said. "Holden has the experience, he just needs the opportunity." I stood in the hallway, my hand on the doorframe, and felt something crack inside my chest. I didn't confront them. I walked back to the dining room, finished my meal, and drove home in silence. I didn't tell anyone what I'd heard, but I started keeping Holden further away from the company's most important projects. In March of 2021, the Chicago Tribune ran a feature on rising architects in the Midwest. The headline read, "The Queen of Chicago Architecture, Delaney Bradford's Meteoric Rise." There was a photo of me standing in front of one of my buildings, a glass and steel mixed-use tower in the Loop that had won 2 design awards. The article called me visionary, fearless, and one of the most exciting talents in modern American architecture. I brought a copy of the paper to Sunday dinner that week. Holden was already there, sitting at the table with a glass of scotch. He picked up the Tribune, read the headline, and set it down without a word. But I saw his hand. His knuckles were white. His jaw was tight. He didn't congratulate me. He didn't say anything at all. That spring, I was nominated for the National Architecture Award, one of the most prestigious honors in the field. The ceremony was in June, held at the Art Institute of Chicago. My mother bought a new dress. Owen wore a suit for the first time in years. Holden came with Vanessa. My father didn't come. He said he had a golf trip planned. I won. When they called my name, I walked to the stage, accepted the crystal trophy, and gave a short speech thanking my team, my clients, and my family. I looked out into the audience and found Holden in the 4th row. He was clapping, but his eyes were cold. That night after the reception, I stood in the lobby of the Art Institute and watched my family leave. My mother hugged me and said she was proud. Owen shook my hand and said, "You earned it." Vanessa smiled politely and said congratulations. Holden was the last to leave. He stopped in front of me, looked at the trophy in my hands and said, "Enjoy it while it lasts." I didn't understand what he meant, but I should have, because that night my brother decided I had to disappear. The call came on October 15th, 2021 at 6:47 in the morning. That morning changed everything. Holden's voice was too calm. I was in my apartment in Lincoln Park when my phone rang at 6:47 a.m. I'd been awake for 10 minutes, standing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee watching the sunrise over the lake. It was October 15th, a Thursday, cold and gray, the kind of morning where the wind off Lake Michigan cuts right through you. "Get here now, Delaney," Holden said. No greeting, no explanation, just 4 words. "Column B7's got a problem." I felt my stomach drop. Column B7 was part of the structural core for the Gold Coast project, a 28-story luxury condo tower at 1200 North Lake Shore Drive. It was the biggest project Bradford and Associates had ever taken on, $245 million. Our reputation was riding on it. "What kind of problem?" I asked. "Just get here." He hung up. I grabbed my coat, my hard hat, and my keys, and I drove to the site, going 15 miles over the speed limit the entire way. I arrived at 7:15 a.m. The construction site was a maze of scaffolding steel beams and concrete forms rising into the foggy sky. Workers in neon vests moved across the lower floors, their voices echoing in the half-finished shell of the building. I parked on the street, clipped my site badge to my jacket, and walked through the main gate. Miguel Santos, the site foreman, met me at the entrance. He was a stocky man in his late 30s with a weathered face and steady hands. He'd been in construction for 20 years. I trusted him more than I trusted anyone else on this project. "Ms. Bradford," he said. His voice was tight. "We've got a situation." "Where's Holden?" "Up on the 7th floor. He's been here since 6:30. That stopped me. Holden was never on site before 8. He hated early mornings. "Show me," I said. We took the construction elevator up. The ride was slow, rattling, the wind whipping through the open sides of the shaft. When we reached the 7th floor, I saw Holden standing near the east corner, arms crossed, staring at a massive steel column that rose through the center of the floor. "Column B7. I walked over to him. "What's going on?" He turned to me. His face was expressionless. "The column's wrong." "What do you mean, wrong?" "The dimensions," he said, "they're off. The rebar's too thin. The concrete mix isn't up to spec." I pulled out my phone and opened the digital blueprints. I scrolled to column B7 and compared the specs on my screen to the column in front of me. He was right. The column was wrong. But the specs on my phone didn't match the original design I'd signed off on 6 months ago. I looked at Holden. "This isn't my design." He shrugged. "I optimized it. We saved $2 million on materials." I felt my blood turn cold. "You what?" "I adjusted the load calculations," he said, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "We didn't need as much steel. The column still meets code." "You can't change structural components without my approval." My voice was rising now. Miguel had stepped back, his eyes darting between us. "This is my project, Holden, my design, my responsibility. If this column fails, it won't fail." "You don't know that." A worker walked past us carrying a length of rebar. Another was operating a concrete mixer 20 feet away. There were at least 15 people on this floor. I turned to Miguel. "Evacuate everyone, now." "Delaney, you're overreacting." Holden started. "Now," I snapped. Miguel nodded and pulled his radio from his belt. "All personnel clear the 7th floor. Everyone down to ground level. Move." The evacuation took 3 minutes. Workers filed toward the elevator and the emergency stairwell, their boots clanging on the metal grating. I stood by column B7, staring at it, my heart pounding. Something was wrong. I could feel it. At 7:42 a.m., I heard the crack. It was soft at first, a sound like ice splitting on a frozen lake. I looked up. The top of column B7 was shifting. "Run!" I screamed. The crack turned into a rumble. The column buckled and a 2-ton steel beam broke loose from the ceiling and came down like a falling tree. I turned and ran toward the stairwell, but the floor was shaking and I couldn't keep my balance. The beam hit the ground behind me. The shockwave knocked me forward. My head slammed into the edge of a concrete form. I felt a sharp, blinding pain, and then I was on the ground, my vision swimming blood running into my left eye. The world went silent, and then I heard the screaming. I don't know how long I was on the ground, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute. When I sat up, the air was thick with dust. My ears were ringing, my head was throbbing. I reached up and touched my forehead, my hand came away red. I looked around. The column had collapsed. The steel beam had crushed part of the floor, and there, 10 feet away from me, half buried under a pile of rebar and concrete, were 3 bodies. Robert Mitchell, 45 years old, steel worker. He had a wife named Sarah and a 3-year-old daughter. James Tucker, 33, crane operator. His mother lived in Naperville. David Rodriguez, 41, site supervisor. He'd worked for Miguel for 12 years. I knew all their names. I crawled toward them. My hands were shaking. There was blood on the concrete, so much blood, and I kept thinking, this isn't real. This can't be real. But it was. I reached Robert first. I pressed my fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. James, nothing. David, nothing. I knelt there on the shattered floor with blood on my hands and dust in my lungs, and I couldn't breathe. 3 people were dead because of me. The sirens started at 7:51 a.m. Ambulances, fire trucks, police. The site filled with first responders. Someone pulled me to my feet and led me down to the street. A paramedic wrapped a bandage around my head and asked me questions I couldn't answer. I sat on the back of an ambulance and stared at the building. Miguel was talking to a police officer. Holden was standing near the fence, his phone to his ear. Workers were gathered in small groups, some of them crying. I saw a man in a gray suit walk past Douglas Meyer, the city building inspector. He glanced at me, then kept walking. I thought about column B7, about Holden's voice on the phone that morning, too calm, too controlled, about the fact that he'd been on site at 6:30 an hour before anyone else, about the design changes he'd made without my approval. 3 people were dead, but that wasn't my design. Holden knew that. The police came to the hospital 3 hours later. They questioned me while the blood on my forehead was still wet. I was sitting on a gurney in the emergency room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital when Detective Morrison walked in. He was a tall man in his early 40s, gray suit, no tie, with the kind of face that had seen too many crime scenes. He flashed his badge and introduced himself. Then he pulled up a chair and asked me to explain what had happened. I told him everything. I told him about the phone call at 6:47 a.m., about arriving at the site and finding Holden already there, about column B7, about the design changes Holden had made without my approval, about the evacuation order I'd given, about the collapse, about the 3 men who died. Detective Morrison took notes. He nodded. He asked clarifying questions. And then he said, "Who signed off on the modified design?" I hesitated. "Holden changed it. I never approved it." "But your firm is the architect of record," Morrison said. "So someone had to sign the structural drawings before they were submitted to the city. That's the law." "I know," I said. "But I didn't sign those drawings. Holden must have." Morrison pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid a sheet of paper across the table. It was a blueprint. Column B7. The modified design, the one that had failed. At the bottom, in the signature block, was my name. My handwriting. My signature. I stared at it. "Whose signature is this?" Morrison asked. "That's mine," I said slowly. "But I never signed that." Morrison's expression didn't change. "Ms. Bradford, this document was submitted to the Chicago Department of Buildings 6 months ago. It has your signature. It has your license number. Are you telling me you didn't sign it?" "I'm telling you I never saw that drawing before today." He leaned back in his chair. "Then how did your signature get on it?" I didn't have an answer. They kept me in the hospital for another 2 hours. The paramedics had stitched up the cut on my forehead, 7 stitches, a neat line just above my left eyebrow. I had a mild concussion. They wanted to keep me for observation, but I refused. I needed to get back to my office. I needed to find the original files. I called Owen from the hospital lobby. He answered on the second ring. "Delaney, oh my God, are you okay? I heard about the collapse." "Owen, I need you to do something for me." My voice was shaking. "Go to the office. Go to my computer. Find the original design files for the Gold Coast project, the ones I submitted in April. I need those files." "Okay, I'm on my way." "And Owen," I paused, "don't tell Holden." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Delaney," Owen said quietly. "What's going on?" "Just find the files." Owen called me back 40 minutes later. "They're gone," he said. I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean, gone?" "The files aren't on your computer. I checked the cloud backup. I checked the shared server. They're not there. They've been deleted." "That's impossible. We have automatic backups. Everything gets saved." "Someone erased them," Owen said, "and they erased the backups too." I closed my eyes. My head was pounding. "Owen, who has admin access to the server. You, me, and Holden." "Of course." Detective Morrison called me at 1:30 p.m. and asked me to come to the station to give a formal statement. I told him I'd be there in 20 minutes. I wasn't under arrest, not yet, but I could feel it coming. The police station was a squat brick building on South State Street. Morrison met me at the front desk and led me down a long hallway to a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a mirror on one wall. I knew what that mirror was. I'd seen enough crime shows to know there were people watching from the other side. Morrison sat across from me. He turned on a recording device and read me my rights. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong. But my hands were shaking. Morrison asked me the same questions he'd asked at the hospital. I gave him the same answers. And then he said, "Ms. Bradford, we've been interviewing other witnesses from the site. Your brother Holden Bradford gave us a statement this morning." I looked up. What did he say? Morrison glanced at his notes. He said he raised concerns about the structural modifications 3 weeks ago. He said he sent you an email recommending that you consult with an independent engineer before proceeding. He said you told him the budget wouldn't allow it. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's a lie. We pulled the email, Morrison said. It's dated September 22nd. It was sent from Holden Bradford's company account to yours. I never received that email. It's in your inbox. I stared at him. That's impossible. He's lying. He must have fabricated it. Ms. Bradford. Morrison said 3 men are dead. We have a signed blueprint with your name on it. We have an email showing you were warned about the risks. We have testimony from your brother saying you ignored his concerns. He leaned forward. Help me understand. What am I missing here? I couldn't speak because I finally understood. Holden hadn't just changed the design. He'd planned this. He'd forged my signature. He'd deleted the original files. He'd fabricated emails. He'd framed me for manslaughter. And he'd done it perfectly. They arrested me at 2:47 p.m. Morrison stood up and said, "Delaney Bradford, you're under arrest for involuntary manslaughter and criminal negligence." He read me my rights again. Another officer came in and put handcuffs on my wrists. The metal was cold. I didn't resist. I didn't say anything. I just stood there staring at the wall while they led me out of the interrogation room and down the hallway toward the booking area. And then I saw the cameras. There were reporters waiting outside the station. A dozen of them, maybe more, with cameras and microphones. Someone must have tipped them off. They started shouting questions the moment I stepped through the door. "Ms. Bradford, did you know the column was unsafe? Do you have anything to say to the families? Were you trying to cut costs?" The officer holding my arm kept walking. I kept my head down. The cameras flashed. I heard the click, click, click of shutters, the whir of video cameras. This was a perp walk. They were parading me in front of the media like I was already guilty. I thought about Robert Mitchell's widow, about James Tucker's mother, about David Rodriguez's sister. They would see this on the news tonight. They would see me in handcuffs. They would think I killed their loved ones. And maybe I had. They put me in the back of a police car and drove me to the Cook County Jail for processing. I sat in silence, staring out the window. We passed my office building, 875 North Michigan Avenue, the 34th floor, where Bradford and Associates had its headquarters. I looked up. Holden was standing at the window. He was watching the car, watching me, and he was smiling. It wasn't a big smile, just a small, satisfied curve of his lips, but I saw it. That smile told me everything. He'd planned this. Every step. The forged signature, the deleted files, the fabricated email, the phone call this morning timed perfectly so I'd arrive just before the column failed, the 3 deaths. He'd orchestrated all of it, and I'd walked right into his trap. I thought my family would help me. I thought my parents would believe me. I thought someone would stand by my side and say, "Delaney didn't do this." I was wrong. Cook County Jail smelled like disinfectant and despair. I'd been there for 5 days when my mother came to visit. I sat in the visitation room on a plastic chair staring at the glass partition that separated me from the outside world. The room was painted beige. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. There were a dozen other inmates in the room talking to their families through phones, their hands pressed against the glass. When my mother walked in, I felt something crack open inside my chest. I thought she was here to tell me she believed me. I thought she was here to say she'd hired a lawyer, that she'd talked to Holden, that she knew I hadn't done this. I was wrong. She sat down on the other side of the glass. She picked up the phone. Her face was pale, her eyes red. She looked older than I remembered. "Delaney," she said. I pressed the phone to my ear. "Mom, thank God you're here. I need you to—" "If you made a mistake," she interrupted, "you need to take responsibility." I stopped breathing. "What?" "Holden explained everything to me," she said. Her voice was quiet, apologetic. "He said you were under a lot of pressure. He said you'd been working 16-hour days. He said maybe you forgot you signed the drawings. It happened, sweetheart. You were stressed. You made a mistake. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Mom, I didn't sign those drawings. Holden forged my signature. He deleted the original files. He framed me." She shook her head. "Delaney, that's your brother. He wouldn't do that." "He did. Honey, I know you're scared, but blaming Holden isn't going to help. You need to talk to your lawyer. You need to figure out how to make this right." I stared at her. "Mom, 3 people died. Holden killed them. He sabotaged the column. He framed me for it. And you're telling me to take responsibility?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what else to say. You could say you believe me." She didn't. She hung up the phone, stood up, and walked out of the visitation room without looking back. 2 days later, my father and Holden came to visit together. I should have known what that meant. My father sat down across from me. Holden stood behind him, his arms crossed his face, a mask of concern. My father picked up the phone. "Delaney," he said. No greeting, no warmth, just my name. "Dad, this situation is a disaster," he said. "The media is destroying the firm's reputation. Clients are pulling contracts. The board is talking about liquidation." I felt a surge of anger. 3 people are dead and you're worried about the reputation. "I'm worried about survival," he said sharply. "Bradford and Associates employs 62 people. Those people have families. They have mortgages. If the firm collapses, they lose everything." "Then help me prove I didn't do this." He shook his head. "Holden is going to take over as CEO. He'll stabilize the company. He'll reassure the clients. He'll make sure the firm survives." I looked at Holden. He was watching me with that same calm, satisfied expression he'd had when he stood at the window and watched the police car drive me away. "You can't do that," I said. "I'm still the majority shareholder." "You're in jail," my father said. "You can't run the company from here." "I own 51% of the shares. You can't just take it from me." "We're not taking it," Holden said. His voice was soft, reasonable. "We're asking you to transfer your shares to me, temporarily, until the situation is resolved." I laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. "You're insane if you think I'm giving you my company." "It's not your company anymore," my father said. "You destroyed it." I hung up the phone. That night I called Nathan Cross from the jail's payphone. I'd scraped together enough money from my commissary account to pay for a 5-minute call. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Delaney." "Nathan, I need you to represent me." There was a long pause. "I can't." "What?" "Your accounts have been frozen," he said. "The court issued an order. Your business assets, your personal accounts, all of it. I can't take your case if you can't pay me." "But you said you'd help." "I said I'd help if I could, but I have a practice to run, Delaney. I have bills to pay. I'm sorry." He hung up. I stood there in the hallway holding the dead phone, staring at the concrete wall. I had no lawyer, no money, no family. I was alone. The court appointed me a public defender the next day. His name was Mark Sullivan. He was 29 years old, fresh out of law school with bags under his eyes and a wrinkled suit. We met in a small conference room at the jail. He dropped a stack of files on the table and sat down across from me. "I'm handling 87 active cases right now," he said. "I'm not going to lie to you, Ms. Bradford. I don't have time to mount a full defense. The prosecution's case is solid. You signed the drawings. You had authority over the project. 3 men died because of structural failure. If we go to trial, you're going to lose." "I didn't sign those drawings," I said. "Can you prove that?" "No, the original files were deleted. Then we need to negotiate a plea deal." "A plea deal?" I stared at him. "I didn't do this." "It doesn't matter," Sullivan said. "What matters is what the jury will believe, and right now the jury is going to believe you're guilty." He left 20 minutes later. He didn't even take notes. Owen came to visit me the next week. He came alone late in the afternoon when the visitation room was almost empty. He sat down across from me and picked up the phone. "Delaney," he said quietly. "I believe you." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Owen." "I know Holden did this," he said. "I don't know how yet, but I know, and I'm going to help you." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." He glanced over his shoulder, then leaned closer to the glass. "I just need more time. Can you hold on?" I nodded. "Yeah, I can hold on." He hung up, but before he stood up, he pressed his hand against the glass. I pressed mine against the other side. That night, I sat on my bunk in my cell and stared at the concrete wall. I thought about my mother telling me to take responsibility. I thought about my father asking me to hand over my company. I thought about Holden standing behind him smiling. I thought about the 3 men who died, Robert, James, David, and I thought about the 1,095 days I was going to spend in this place. I pulled the sharpened edge of a plastic spork from under my mattress and pressed it into the wall. 1 mark. Day 1. 1,094 more to go. I didn't pray for rescue anymore. I didn't hope my family would save me. I started planning revenge. The trial began on January 10th, 2022, the coldest day of the year. 4 weeks. It took the jury 3 hours to destroy my life. But I remembered every lie, every word, every witness who stood on that stand and lied through their teeth. I would need those lies later. The courtroom was packed, media in the back, families of the victims in the front. Sarah Mitchell Roberts' widow sat 3 rows behind the prosecution, clutching a tissue. She never looked at me. I sat next to Mark Sullivan. He'd done his best, but his best wasn't enough. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh was 45 sharp and ruthless. In her opening statement, she pointed at me and said, "This is a case about arrogance. A woman who built an empire and thought the rules didn't apply to her. A woman who cut corners, ignored warnings, and sacrificed safety for profit. Because of her choices, 3 men are dead." I sat perfectly still. I'd learned that any emotion I showed would be used against me. Holden took the stand on day 3. Gray suit, blue tie, expression of deep sorrow. He looked like the perfect grieving brother. Jennifer Walsh asked him about me. "Delaney's brilliant," Holden said, his voice soft and pained. "She built Bradford and Associates from nothing. But over the past year, I started to worry. She was working 16-hour days. She wasn't sleeping. She kept talking about proving herself, proving she was as good as our father." I wrote that down, every word. Walsh asked if he'd raised concerns about the structural design. Yes, 3 weeks before the collapse, I sent her an email recommending we hire an independent engineer. I was worried the budget cuts were affecting safety. And how did Ms. Bradford respond? She told me we couldn't afford it. She said I was being paranoid. That was a lie. I underlined it in my mind. Mark cross-examined. "Mr. Bradford, do you have any structural engineering credentials?" "No." "So, you're not qualified to assess whether a column design is safe?" "No, but I know when something doesn't feel right." "Yet you didn't report your concerns to the city." Holden hesitated. "I thought my sister would handle it." Mark sat down. He'd barely made a dent. My father took the stand on day 7. He looked older, thinner. He didn't look at me. Walsh asked him about me. "Delaney's always been driven," he said, his voice flat. "She always wanted to prove herself. I think she felt she had something to prove because she's a woman in a male-dominated field. Did that drive ever concern you?" "Sometimes. She could be reckless. She'd take on projects that were too big, too risky. I warned her about the Gold Coast project. I told her it was beyond her capacity. She didn't listen." Another lie, I memorized every word. My mother took the stand on day 9. She cried the entire time. Walsh asked if she believed I was capable of negligence. My mother looked at me. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. "I love my daughter," she said. "But 3 men are dead. 3 families are grieving. If Delaney made a mistake, she needs to accept the consequences." I didn't cry. I just stared at her. She looked away. I filed that moment away. I would need it later. Vanessa took the stand on day 11. She brought financial records. She testified that I'd been stressed about money, that I'd been arguing with Holden about budget overruns, that I'd said we needed to cut costs. I made a note of every claim. I knew which ones were true and which weren't. Douglas Meyer, the city building inspector, took the stand on day 13. He said I'd pressured him to approve the drawings. He said I'd been insistent and aggressive. I knew the truth. Holden had bribed him with $85,000, but I had no proof. Not yet. I watched him carefully. The way he avoided eye contact, the way his hands fidgeted. I would remember that. I took the stand on day 16. Mark asked me to tell my side. I told the truth. Holden had changed the design without my approval. The files had been deleted. The signature on the blueprints wasn't mine. I'd been framed. Jennifer Walsh stood for cross-examination. Miss Bradford, if the blueprints were forged, where are the originals? They were deleted. By whom? By Holden. Do you have proof? No. Do you have any evidence that your brother framed you? The files were deleted from the server. That's evidence. Or, Walsh said, you deleted them yourself to cover your tracks. I didn't. You signed the blueprint 6 months ago. Your name, your license number. And now, after 3 men are dead, you're claiming you were framed. Isn't that convenient? I didn't answer. Ms. Bradford, isn't it true that you were under financial pressure, that you cut corners to save money? No? Then why did you authorize the column modifications? I didn't. But your signature is on the drawings. It's forged. Do you have a handwriting expert to confirm that Mark hadn't been able to afford one? No, I said. Walsh smiled. No further questions? I returned to my seat. I knew how that looked to the jury, but I also knew every question Walsh had asked, every trap she'd set. I cataloged all of it. Closing arguments took place on day 28. Mark argued that there were too many unanswered questions, that the evidence was circumstantial, that reasonable doubt existed. But Walsh was better. 3 men are dead, she said. Robert Mitchell, James Tucker, David Rodriguez. They were father's brother's sons. They went to work that morning and never came home. Why? Because Delaney Bradford signed off on a design she knew was unsafe. Because she put profit over safety. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they came back, I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel scared. I just felt empty. The 4-person stood. Judge Harrison asked for the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter in the 1st degree. Count 1, count 2, count 3. The courtroom erupted. Sarah Mitchell sobbed. My mother gasped. Holden sat perfectly still, his face blank. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. He sentenced me to 3 years in state prison, 1 year for each life. The bailiff came to handcuff me. I stood up. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything. As they led me out of the courtroom, I turned my head. Holden was shaking hands with Jennifer Walsh, smiling. I made a promise to myself right then and there. I would survive this. And then I would take everything back. Lincoln Correctional Center smelled like rust, regret, and forgotten dreams. I carved the first mark on day 1. By day 100, I had a plan. The prison library became my sanctuary. Case law became my weapon. Day 1. I didn't carve a mark. I cried. I lay on the bottom bunk in my cell and stared at the concrete ceiling and cried until my ribs ached. Rosa, my cellmate, didn't say anything. She just turned off the light and let me grieve. I thought about Robert Mitchell's 3-year-old daughter, about James Tucker's mother in Naperville, about David Rodriguez's sister, about the families who thought I'd killed their loved ones. I cried until there were no tears left. Day 30. My mother requested a visit. The guard told me during breakfast. I stared at the form for 10 minutes. Then I checked the box marked refused and handed it back. Rosa watched me from across the table. She didn't ask why. She already knew. Day 100. Rosa asked me why I was really here. We were sitting on our bunks after lights out, the prison never truly silent around us. I told her everything. The collapse. Holden's phone call at 6:47 a.m., the forged signature, the deleted files, the fabricated emails, the trial. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You got framed." "Yeah." "You gonna do something about it?" I didn't know how to answer that. I had no money, no lawyer, no evidence. I was just inmate number 847293 at Lincoln Correctional Center, serving 3 years for crimes I didn't commit. Day 150. Rosa said, "You need to fight back." "How?" I asked. "I have no money, no lawyer, no evidence." "Then get some." She made it sound so simple, but I didn't know where to start. Day 200. I discovered the prison library. It was a small room on the second floor of the education wing, lined with metal shelves and fluorescent lights that hummed constantly. Most of the books were donated paperbacks, romance novels, thrillers, self-help books with cracked spines and dog-eared pages. But in the back corner on the bottom shelf, almost hidden behind a stack of old magazines, there were law books. I checked out 3 of them that day: criminal procedure, evidence, appeals. I read them at night, sitting on my bunk with the weak overhead light while Rosa slept above me. I took notes on scraps of paper I saved from the commissary. I memorized case names, precedents, procedural requirements. By day 400, I'd read over 50 law books. I knew more about the legal system than I had during my own trial. I understood how Mark Sullivan had failed me. I understood how Jennifer Walsh had manipulated the jury. I understood how Holden had built his perfect frame. Mrs. Eleanor Hughes, the prison librarian, was 67 years old with silver hair and kind eyes. She'd been a paralegal before she retired. She noticed me checking out the same types of books week after week. One afternoon, she approached me at the circulation desk. "You're serious about this," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." She started bringing me books that weren't in the library, case law textbooks, precedent guides, legal strategy manuals. She never asked why I wanted them. She just smiled and said, "Knowledge is power, dear." Day 500. I wrote a letter to Nathan Cross. I told him I'd been studying. I told him I'd found procedural errors in my trial. I told him about the forged signature, the deleted files, the fabricated emails. I asked if he'd reconsider representing me. I mailed it on a Monday, then I waited. He didn't respond. Day 550. Nathan came to visit. He sat across from me in the visitation room. His tie loosened, his face tired. Dark circles under his eyes. He looked older than I remembered. "I got your letter," he said, "and I'll take another look at your case." I felt something crack open in my chest. Hope. The dangerous kind. The kind that could destroy you if you let it. Day 600. I received a letter from Owen. The prison censors read all our mail, so Owen wrote in code. He asked if I remembered Dad's old blueprints in the basement, where Richard used to store project files from the firm before he retired. I understood immediately. He was asking if I remembered where the old archives were kept. I wrote back, "Foundation level, east wall, behind the filing cabinet." I mailed the letter and prayed the censors wouldn't understand. Day 700. Owen's reply came in a plain white envelope. 2 words: "Found the archives." He'd found the original design files, the ones Holden had deleted from the server, the ones that proved I hadn't authorized the column modifications, the ones that would prove my signature was forged. I sat on my bunk and read those 2 words over and over until Rosa asked if I was okay. "I'm going to win," I told her. She smiled. "Damn right you are." The 3rd year, everything came together like pieces of a puzzle I'd been assembling in the dark. Day 900. I finished writing the playbook. 127 pages. Every motion Nathan would file, every account we'd freeze, every piece of evidence we'd expose, every step of my revenge. I wrote it in a spiral notebook I'd bought from the commissary, my handwriting small and precise to save space. I kept it hidden under my mattress, wrapped in a plastic bag. Day 1000. Nathan visited again. He brought a folder 3 inches thick. Inside were copies of the original design files Owen had found, my specifications, my calculations, my signature on the cover page, the real one, not the forgery. "This is enough for an appeal," Nathan said. "I don't want an appeal," I told him. "I want to walk out of here in 95 days and destroy him." Nathan studied me for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll take your case, pro bono. We'll file the motions the day you're released." "Why?" "Because I should have believed you the first time." Day 1050. Owen sent me 89 documents carefully coded in letters that looked like family updates, building permits, financial records, email chains, wire transfer receipts, everything I needed to prove Holden had embezzled $19.7 million from Bradford and Associates over 3 years. We still communicated in code. Owen called it organizing the archive. I called it building a case. Day 1090. Holden requested a visit. the first time in 3 years. I accepted. I needed to see his face. I needed to know if he suspected anything. I walked to the visitation room with my heart pounding. I sat down at Station 4 and picked up the phone. Holden walked in wearing a charcoal suit and a Rolex. He looked exactly the same, confident, successful, untouchable. He sat down across from me, the glass partition between us. "Delaney," he said. His voice was soft, concerned, almost loving. "How are you holding up?" "Fine. I've been thinking about you. I know this has been hard. I know you're angry. But when you get out, we can move past this. You can come back to the firm. We can rebuild together, like a family." I stared at him. He actually believed I'd forgiven him. He actually thought I'd come crawling back broken and grateful. "Sure, Holden," I said. My voice was calm, empty. "We'll rebuild." He smiled. That same satisfied smile I'd seen through the police car window 3 years ago. He thought he'd won. Day 1094. I sat on my bunk and pulled the playbook out from under my mattress. I read it one last time, every phase committed to memory, every detail, every name, every number. Then I tore out the pages one by one and burned them in the small metal trash can under the sink. Rosa stood by the door, arms crossed, watching the hallway for guards. The pages curled and blackened. The ink ran. 3 years of planning turning to ash. When the last page turned to ash, I crushed it with my palm and flushed it down the toilet. Gone, but not forgotten. "Feel better?" Rosa asked. "Yeah." "You don't need it anymore." "No." I tapped the side of my head. "Everything's here now." That night, I carved the final mark on the wall beside my bunk. 1094. I ran my fingers over the grooves. Every single day accounted for. Tomorrow was day 1095. Tomorrow I would stop counting days. Tomorrow I would start hunting. Day 1094, they came as family. They came together. One final attempt to take what little I had left. I'd refused visits for 3 years. I accepted this one for a reason. The guard knocked on my cell door at 2 p.m. "Bradford, you got visitors." Rosa looked up from her bunk. "You sure about this?" "Yeah." "Want me to wait up?" "No, I'll be fine." I walked to the visitation room. The winter light was already fading through the high windows. I sat down at the booth, picked up the phone, and waited. They walked in one by one. Holden first wearing a charcoal suit and a gold watch. Vanessa beside him in a cream sweater and pearls. My father in his navy blazer, his jaw set. My mother last, her eyes already red. They sat down across from me. Holden in the center, the rest flanking him like soldiers. He picked up the phone. "Delaney," he said. His voice was warm, almost cheerful. "You look well." I didn't respond. "We've missed you," Vanessa added, leaning into the frame. Her smile was bright, practiced. "It's been too long." I stared at her. 3 years ago, she'd testified that I'd been stressed about money, that I'd cut corners, that I'd sacrificed safety for profit. Now she was pretending we were family. My father cleared his throat. "Delaney, the company is struggling. Without stable leadership, clients are leaving. The board is talking about restructuring. We need to act quickly." "Act how?" I asked. Holden leaned forward. "We need you to sign over your voting shares, temporarily, just until you're back on your feet. Once you're out, once you've had time to recover, we can revisit the arrangement." I almost laughed. "Sign over my shares?" I repeated. "It's for the good of the companies," my father said. "Bradford and Associates has been in our family for 30 years. Your grandfather built it. I grew it. You and Holden have carried it forward. We can't let it fall apart now." My mother pressed a tissue to her eyes. "Delaney, please. Think about your grandfather's legacy. Think about everything we've built." "Everything I've built," I said quietly. Holden's smile tightened. "We all built it, Delaney, together." Vanessa nodded. "It's time to move past this. Let go of the anger. Let go of the blame. Sign the papers and we can start healing as a family." I looked at each of them. My father, who'd told a jury I was reckless. My mother, who'd said I needed to accept the consequences. Holden, who'd framed me for murder. Vanessa, who'd lied on the stand. They actually thought I'd give them my company. The door to the visitation room opened. Owen walked in. He was late, right on schedule. He sat down at the end of the row, picked up the phone on his side and said, Sorry, I'm late. Traffic. Holden glanced at him and nodded. Owen, good. Maybe you can talk some sense into her. Owen looked at me. His face was carefully neutral. Delaney, I know you're angry. I get it. But family is about survival. Sometimes we have to put the past behind us and move forward. For the sake of the business. For the sake of everyone who depends on us. Holden smiled. He thought Owen was on his side. But I saw it. The flicker in Owen's eyes. The slight tilt of his head. The message he was really sending. We're ready. I held his gaze for 1 second. Then I looked back at Holden. No, I said. Holden blinked. What? I'm not signing anything. My father's face hardened. Delaney, don't be foolish. If you refuse, the board will vote to remove you. You'll lose everything. I already lost everything, I said. 3 years ago, when you let them send me to prison for something I didn't do. My mother sobbed. Delaney, please. I spent 1,094 days in here, I said. My voice was calm, cold. 1,094 days carving marks on a wall. 1,094 days thinking about what you did to me. And you think I'm going to hand you my company? Holden leaned back. His smile was gone. You don't have a choice. Yes, I do. Delaney. My father said, his voice low and dangerous. You're throwing everything away. No, I said. I'm taking back what you stole. I stood up. The phone was still in my hand. Consider this goodbye, I said. I hung up. Holden stood. He pressed his hand against the glass. Delaney, wait. I turned and walked toward the door. My mother screamed my name. My father shouted something I didn't hear. Holden pounded on the glass. I didn't look back. Owen whispered something to Holden. I couldn't hear it through the partition, but I saw Owen's lips move. I tried. He was confirming it, not to Holden, to me. Everything was in place. I walked back to my cell. Rosa was sitting on her bunk reading a paperback. How'd it go? She asked. Perfect. She grinned. Tomorrow's the big day. Yeah. You ready? I looked at the wall. At the 1,094 marks I'd carved over 3 years. At the space where the 1,095th mark would go. I'd been ready for a long time, I said. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my bunk and stared at the ceiling and thought about tomorrow. Tomorrow, the prison gates would open. Tomorrow, I'd walk out into the cold morning air. Tomorrow, Holden would learn what 3 years of planning looked like. Tomorrow, they would learn never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. The prison gates opened at 8:47 a.m. on Wednesday. 8:47 a.m. The gates opened. I walked out carrying a plastic bag and 3 years of planning. A black Audi A8 was waiting. Nathan Cross had arrived early. At 8 o'clock that morning, I stood in my cell for the last time. Rosa sat on her bunk watching me. You good? She asked. Yeah. You know what you're doing? Every step. She smiled. Go out there and destroy them. I nodded. I didn't say thank you. We both knew words didn't matter. The guard came at 8:30. He unlocked the door and led me down the hallway to processing. They returned my personal belongings, a wallet, a phone that hadn't worked in 3 years, and a set of keys to an apartment I no longer owned. I signed the release forms. I changed out of my prison uniform into the clothes Owen had sent, a black coat, dark jeans, boots. At 8:45, they walked me to the front gate. And then I saw them. The media. Over 15 reporters, cameras, microphones, a circus, and my family. Richard stood at the front wearing his navy blazer. Patricia beside him holding white tulips. Vanessa in a designer coat, her hair perfect. Holden in a charcoal suit, his hands in his pockets, smiling. They'd staged this, a photo op. The loving family welcoming home the convicted daughter. Forgiveness, redemption. I almost laughed. Owen stood far to the left away from the others. He didn't approach. That was the plan. He watched me, his face carefully neutral. The gate opened. The cameras flashed. Patricia stepped forward, her arms outstretched, the tulips trembling in her hands. Sweetheart, she said, her voice loud enough for the microphones to catch. Welcome home. I walked straight past her. I didn't slow down. I didn't look at her. I didn't take the flowers. I heard them fall to the pavement behind me. Richard reached out. Delaney. I walked past him too. Holden's smile faltered. He stepped forward, blocking my path. Delaney, we need to talk. I met his eyes. For 3 years, I'd imagined this moment. I'd imagined what I'd say, what I'd do. But I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. And then I stepped around him and kept walking. The black Audi pulled up to the curb. Nathan stepped out of the driver's side and opened the back door. He said loud enough for the cameras, "Your car is ready, Ms. Bradford." I slid into the back seat. The door closed. The noise, the shouting reporters, my mother's voice calling my name, the cameras clicking, all of it cut off. Through the tinted window, I watched the scene unfold. The reporters swarmed my family. Patricia's hand hung limp at her side, the tulips scattered on the ground. Holden stared at the license plate, his jaw tight. Nathan got into the driver's seat and pulled away from the curb. We didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. I stared out the window. The landscape changed from flat, empty fields to suburbs, then to the Chicago skyline rising in the distance. Nathan glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "The penthouse is ready. Dr. Cartwright is waiting." "Take the long way," I said. "I want to see the city." Nathan nodded and took the exit toward downtown. We drove through the loop, past the glass towers and limestone facades, past the buildings I'd designed, the mixed-use development on Wacker Drive, the office tower on LaSalle Street, the hotel in River North. They were all still standing, my work, my legacy. And then we turned onto Lakeshore Drive, and I saw it. The Gold Coast Tower, 1,200 North Lakeshore Drive, 28 stories of glass and steel gleaming in the winter sun. It was finished. "Stop here," I said. Nathan pulled over. I got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk staring up at the building. 3 men had died here. Robert Mitchell, James Tucker, David Rodriguez. Holden had killed them. He'd sabotaged column B7. He'd framed me for it. He'd walked away clean. But not anymore. Today, I said quietly, everyone will know the truth. Nathan stood beside me. "How long until Holden realizes the accounts are frozen?" I turned to him. "What time is it?" 9:30. "He's giving a keynote at the AIA conference at 2 this afternoon," I said. "The corporate card will decline when he tries to pay for lunch, around noon." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You timed it for the middle of his speech." "No." I smiled. It was the first time I'd smiled in 3 years. I timed it so he'd be on stage, in front of 300 architects, when his assistant walks in and tells him his accounts are frozen. Nathan stared at me, then he laughed. "You're terrifying." "Good." We got back in the car. Nathan pulled onto Lakeshore Drive, heading south toward the loop. "Phase 1 begins now," I said. Nathan nodded. "Dr. Cartwright has the forensic audit ready. I've drafted the emergency motions. As soon as we're at the penthouse, we file." "How long until the court processes them?" 4 hours, maybe 5. The freeze will be in effect by 2 p.m. "Perfect." We drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Nathan said, "Delaney, are you sure you want to do this? Once we file, there's no going back. Holden will know. Your family will know. This will get ugly." I looked out the window. The Chicago River glittered in the sunlight. The city I'd helped build stretched out in every direction. "It's already ugly," I said. "I'm just evening the score." The penthouse overlooked the Chicago River. Floor 42, floor-to-ceiling glass, a war room disguised as luxury. Phase 1 had just begun. By tonight, Holden would lose the first thing he stole control. I stood in the bathroom of the penthouse for 10 minutes before I turned on the shower. 3 years. I hadn't had privacy in 3 years. I'd showered in a concrete stall with 5 other women, cold water, 3 minutes max. Now I stood in front of Italian marble and polished chrome. The water was hot. The towels were soft. I closed my eyes and let the steam fill the room. For 30 seconds, I let myself feel it. The relief, the exhaustion, the weight of 1,095 days. And then I stepped out, dried off, and got dressed. There was work to do. The war room was a corner office with a mahogany table, 3 laptops, and stacks of documents. Nathan was already there typing. A woman I didn't recognize stood by the window, a tablet in her hand. She turned when I walked in. She was 58 with sharp gray eyes and a no-nonsense posture. She wore a black blazer and a slight smile. "Delaney Bradford," she said. "I'm Dr. Helen Cartwright, former federal prosecutor, current pain-in-the-ass consultant." She extended her hand. "Welcome back. Let's destroy them." I shook her hand. Glad to be here. Nathan looked up from his laptop. Delaney, I've drafted the emergency motions. Freeze on all corporate accounts tied to Holden's signature authority. Injunction against board actions without forensic audit. We're ready to file. Good. I sat down at the table. Show me the documents. Nathan slid a folder across the table. 89 pages, financial records, wire transfers, email chains, building permits. Everything Owen had collected over 3 years. I started reading. 15 minutes in, I stopped. Nathan, this email from Holden to Douglas Meyer, the one about the inspection approval. What about it? The metadata says it was sent on September 10th, but the timestamp in the email header says September 22nd. Nathan frowned. That's a typo. No. I pulled up the file on my laptop. It's not a typo. Someone backdated this email. Holden created it after the collapse and made it look like he'd sent it before. Helen leaned over my shoulder. That's forgery. That's evidence tampering. That's a federal crime. I looked at Nathan. Can you prove it? Maybe, but it'll take time. How much time? A week, maybe more. We don't have a week. I pulled out my phone and dialed Owen. He answered on the second ring. Delaney. Owen, I need you to pull the server logs for Holden's email account, September through October 2021. I need the creation timestamps for every message he sent to Douglas Meyer. Why? Because he forged evidence, and I need proof in the next 20 minutes. Owen was silent for 3 seconds. Then he said, I'll call you back. At 1:30 p.m., Owen called back. I have it. The email was created on October 20th, 2 days after you were arrested. Holden backdated it to make it look like he'd warned you. I closed my eyes. Send it to Nathan, now! Nathan's laptop pinged. He opened the file, read it, and looked up at me. This is enough. If we include this in the motion, the judge will grant everything we ask for. Good. I checked my watch. What time is Holden's keynote? 2 p.m. He's presenting with the CEO of Midwest Development. They're announcing a partnership, a $180 million contract. I smiled. File the motions at 1:45. I want his card to decline on stage. Nathan stared at me. Delaney, that's cruel, I said. He framed me for manslaughter. He let me rot in prison for 3 years. I want 300 architects to watch him fail. Helen laughed. I like you. Nathan nodded. 1:45 it is. At 1:45 p.m., Nathan filed the emergency motions electronically. 3 motions. Freeze all corporate accounts under Holden Bradford's authority. Injunction against board meetings. Mandatory forensic audit. At 1:48 p.m., Helen called Judge Harrison. Walter, it's Helen Cartwright. I'm calling in that favor from the Meridian case. She paused. I need you to sign an emergency freeze order. Today, now. Another pause. Thank you. She hung up. He'll sign it in the next 5 minutes. At 1:50 p.m., the court order went through. The bank received the freeze notice. At 2 p.m., we pulled up the AIA conference live stream on the big screen in the war room. Holden stood on stage in a charcoal suit, smiling. The CEO of Midwest Development stood beside him. Behind them, a slide read, Bradford and Associates plus Midwest Development redefining Chicago's skyline. Holden spoke into the microphone. We're thrilled to announce this partnership. Together, we're going to build the future of this city. The audience applauded. The CEO shook Holden's hand. To celebrate, drinks are on Bradford and Associates. Holden laughed and pulled out his corporate black card. He handed it to a server at the side of the stage. The server swiped it. She frowned. She swiped it again. At 2:03 p.m., she leaned over and whispered something to Holden. Holden's smile froze. He took the card back. He tried it himself at a payment terminal on the table. Declined. He tried again. Declined. He tried a third time. Declined. The audience started whispering. The CEO of Midwest Development stopped mid-handshake and stepped back. Holden's phone buzzed. He pulled it out. His face went white. On the live stream, we could see him mouth the words, "What the fuck?" I closed the laptop. Phase 1 complete, I said. Nathan exhaled. Jesus. Helen raised her coffee cup. To revenge. That night, I stood at the window of the penthouse and looked out over the city. The lights of Chicago stretched out in every direction. The river glittered below. Nathan came to stand beside me. What's next? Phase 2. Tomorrow, Miguel Santos holds a press conference. He's going to tell the truth about what he saw on October 15th. The forensic report goes public. And Phase 3. I smiled. Vanessa learns about Sophia. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Holden's mistress. Yeah, Owen has the hotel receipts, the text messages, the photos. Vanessa's going to flip, and when she does, she's going to hand us everything. You've thought of everything. I had 3 years. Holden's phone rang 47 times before sunrise. By 9 a.m., the Chicago Tribune headline screamed, "Structural Sabotage in Gold Coast Deaths." Miguel Santos had waited 3 years to tell the truth. Holden woke up at 6:30 a.m. to 47 missed calls. I know because Nathan told me. He'd been monitoring Holden's phone records since yesterday. 47 calls, board members, clients, the bank, his lawyer, reporters. Holden sat up in bed and opened the first link his assistant had sent him. A leaked forensic report. 112 pages. Expert analysis proving the signature on the modified blueprints was forged. Metallurgy reports showing the rebar in column B7 was 30% weaker than code required. Financial records showing Holden had embezzled $19.7 million over 3 years. By 7 a.m., Vanessa was standing in the doorway of their bedroom holding her phone. "Did you forge it?" she asked. Holden looked up. "It's complicated." "Did you forge it?" Vanessa, listen. Answer the question. He didn't. She walked out. At 8 a.m., the Chicago Tribune ran the story on the front page, side-by-side comparison of my original blueprints and Holden's modified version. A quote from an anonymous structural engineer, "The changes reduced load-bearing capacity by 30%. This was negligence at best, sabotage at worst." By 8:30, every major news outlet in Chicago had picked up the story. At 9 a.m., Miguel Santos held a press conference. I watched it from the penthouse. Nathan sat beside me, laptop open. Helen stood by the window, arms crossed. Miguel stood in front of his house in Pilsen, a small brick bungalow with a chain-link fence. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans. His hands were shaking. A dozen reporters crowded the sidewalk, cameras rolling. "My name is Miguel Santos," he said. His voice was quiet, unsteady. "I was the site foreman on the Gold Coast project. I was there the morning of October 15th, 2021. I saw what happened." He paused. He looked down at his hands. "I saw Mr. Holden Bradford arrive at the site at 6:30 that morning, an hour before Mrs. Delaney Bradford. He told me he'd made modifications to column B7. He said it would save money." I told him it didn't look safe. He told me to keep my mouth shut. He said, "Don't tell Delaney." A reporter shouted a question. Miguel held up his hand. "I should have said something. I should have reported it. But Mr. Bradford threatened my job. He said if I caused trouble, he'd make sure I never worked in construction again." Miguel's voice cracked. "But 3 people died. Robert Mitchell, James Tucker, David Rodriguez. They were my friends. And Ms. Delaney Bradford went to prison for something she didn't do. I can't be silent anymore." He stepped back. The reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Miguel didn't answer. He walked inside and closed the door. Nathan looked at me. "He did great." "Yeah." "Are you okay?" I nodded. "Good people can only stay silent for so long." Helen turned from the window. "The board is meeting in an hour, emergency session. They're going to try to remove Holden." "Let them," I said. At 10 a.m., the Bradford and Associates office was under siege. Reporters lined the sidewalk. Security had to block the entrance. Inside, the board convened on the 34th floor. I wasn't there, but Owen was. He sent me updates every 15 minutes. 10:15 a.m. board voting on emergency CEO removal. 10:30 a.m. Holden's shouting. Says Miguel is lying. 10:45 a.m. board wants forensic audit before voting. Holden's lawyer is stalling. At 11 a.m., a reporter cornered Holden in the lobby of the building. The footage went viral within minutes. "Mr. Bradford, did you frame your sister?" Holden's face was pale, his jaw tight. No comment. "Did you forge her signature?" No comment. "Did you sabotage the Gold Coast project?" Holden shoved past the reporter and walked out. By noon, the stock price had dropped 18%. Midwest Development issued a statement. We are pausing all partnership discussions pending the outcome of the investigation. 3 clients pulled their contracts. 2 more demanded meetings. At 1 p.m., Owen held a press conference of his own. He stood outside the Bradford and Associates building, wearing a suit, his face somber. "Effective immediately, I'm resigning from Bradford and Associates," he said. "I can't work for a company that prioritizes profit over safety. I can't work for a man who framed his own sister." It was a performance. We'd planned it 2 days ago. Owen was burning his bridge with Holden publicly, which would make it easier for him to testify later. But to the media, it looked like a family member turning against Holden. It was perfect. At 2 p.m., the FBI issued a statement. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has opened an investigation into allegations of fraud, embezzlement, and evidence tampering related to Bradford and Associates and the October 2021 Gold Coast construction collapse. We are working closely with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. No arrests have been made at this time. Within an hour, a federal judge signed a warrant to freeze Holden's personal and corporate assets pending the investigation. By 3 p.m., Holden couldn't access his bank accounts. He couldn't use his credit cards. He couldn't sell his car or his house. He was trapped. I stood at the window of the penthouse and watched the sun set over the city. Nathan came to stand beside me. "It's working." "Yeah." "What's next?" "Vanessa," I said. "You think she'll flip?" "I know she will." Helen walked over, holding a glass of wine. "What makes you so sure?" I smiled. "Because tonight she's going to find out Holden's been cheating on her." At 8 p.m., a courier delivered an envelope to Holden and Vanessa's townhouse in Lincoln Park. The envelope was thick, plain, unmarked. Vanessa opened it. Inside were photographs. Holden and Sophia Brennan, the 29-year-old junior architect who worked on the Gold Coast project, kissing in a hotel lobby, holding hands in a restaurant, walking into a room at the Peninsula Hotel. 12 photos, dated over the past 6 months. At the bottom of the envelope was a handwritten note on plain white paper. "He lied to you too. Let's talk. DB." Vanessa called at 11:23 p.m. Her voice was shaking. "The world knows the truth now. But before I reveal who delivered the final blow, the person Holden never saw coming comment, who do you think betrayed him next? Let me see your guesses." Quick reminder, this story blends powerful lessons with dramatized events for impact. If heavy themes of betrayal aren't your style, you can pause here. Ready for the twist. Let's go. "Where do you want to meet?" Vanessa's voice was shaking. "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Holden was about to learn that lesson twice. I gave her the address of a small cafe in Logan Square, the kind of place that stayed open late and didn't ask questions. Nathan was already there, sitting at a corner table with a laptop and a folder. I arrived at 11:30. The rain was cold, steady, drumming against the windows. The cafe was nearly empty. A barista wiped down the counter. 2 college students huddled over textbooks in the front. I sat in the back booth and ordered 2 coffees. Vanessa walked in at 11:45. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, her mascara smudged. She wore a black coat over sweatpants and sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked nothing like the polished woman who'd testified against me 3 years ago. She sat down across from me. She didn't take off her coat. "You sent those photos," she said. "Yes." "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. I hired a private investigator. He followed Holden. All the photos were taken in public. It's legal. Her jaw tightened. "Why tell me?" I leaned forward. "Because you helped destroy me. Now he's destroying you. We can help each other." "I don't trust you." "You don't have to. You just have to hate him more than you hate me." She stared at me. Then she looked down at her coffee. She didn't drink it. "I loved him," she said quietly. "When he showed me the evidence against you, I believed him. He had emails. He had financial records. He said you were cutting corners. He said you were reckless. He said you'd framed him. And you believed him. He's my husband." Her voice cracked. I was supposed to believe him. I didn't say anything. Vanessa wiped her eyes. "He asked me to help. He said he needed proof of your negligence. He asked me to alter some contractor invoices, just small changes, dates, amounts. He said it was to show you'd been lying about the budget." I felt my chest tighten. "You forged documents." "Yes." She looked up at me. Tears streamed down her face. "I helped send you to prison, and he was with her the whole time." Her voice broke on the last word. I sat back. I'd expected anger. I'd expected denial. I hadn't expected this. "How long has it been going on?" I asked. 6 months, maybe longer. I don't know." She pulled a tissue from her pocket and pressed it to her eyes. "He told me he was working late. He told me he was meeting clients, and I believed him. Because I'm an idiot." "You're not an idiot. You're a woman who trusted her husband." She laughed bitterly. Look where that got me. I slid a piece of paper across the table. "This is an immunity agreement. Nathan drafted it. If you cooperate, fully testify, provide evidence, answer every question, the DA will recommend 5 years instead of 15. Vanessa stared at the paper. 5 years? You have 2 kids, 6 and 8, right? She looked up sharply. "How do you know that?" "I know everything, Vanessa. You'll be out before they're teenagers. You'll still have a life. And if I don't cooperate, then you go down with him. 15 years, conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice. Your kids will be adults by the time you get out." She picked up the paper. Her hands were shaking. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" I met her eyes. "Because unlike him, I don't lie." The silence stretched between us. "What do you need?" she asked finally. "Everything. Emails, financial records, offshore accounts, forged documents, timeline, names. I need proof that Holden orchestrated this. I need proof that he used you." Vanessa reached into her purse and pulled out a USB drive. She set it on the table. "I started copying files 2 months ago," she said. "I didn't know why, I had a feeling something was wrong. I thought maybe he was hiding money. I didn't know about Sophia." I picked up the drive. "What's on here?" 156 emails between me and Holden, planning the frame-up, coordinating testimony. He told me exactly what to say on the stand. "What else?" "Offshore account statements, $19.7 million. He's been embezzling for 3 years. Wire transfer receipts, shell companies in the Cayman Islands." I felt my pulse quicken. This was more than I'd hoped for. "There's more," Vanessa said. "The original forged contractor invoices, the ones I altered. They have my handwriting on them. I kept copies because I was scared he'd blame me if anything went wrong." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out I was right." Nathan walked over. He set a folder on the table and opened it. Inside was the immunity agreement. 3 pages. Legal language. Signatures at the bottom. "Read it carefully," Nathan said. "Once you sign, you're committed." Vanessa read. It took her 5 minutes. Then she looked up at me. "I want one more thing." "What?" "Immunity covers testimony about the affair. I want to testify about Sophia, about the hotels, the lies. I want the world to know what kind of man he is. He deserves to lose everything." I looked at Nathan. He nodded. "We can add that." Nathan pulled out a pen and wrote a clause at the bottom of the agreement. Vanessa read it, then signed. She slid the paper back across the table. Done. I picked up the USB drive and held it in my hand. It was small light. It felt like nothing, but it was everything. Nathan put the signed agreement in his folder. This will end him. I looked at Vanessa. "Do you hate me?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Yes, but I hate him more. For now, that's enough." I nodded. For now, that's enough. 3 days later, FBI agents arrived with a warrant. Vanessa's testimony was 47 pages. Every word was true. The FBI didn't knock gently. 6 a.m. Thursday, 16 agents descended. 6 a.m. Thursday, 16 agents file boxes search warrant. By noon, 2,847 documents had been seized. By nightfall, Holden was in custody. The FBI arrived in 6 black SUVs. They didn't knock. They used a battering ram on the glass doors of Bradford and Associates and flooded the lobby. I wasn't there. But Nathan called me at 6:15 a.m. and told me everything. Agent Sarah Morrison, the lead investigator, walked straight to Holden's office on the 34th floor. Holden was already there, sitting at his desk, staring at his laptop. He'd been up all night. When the agents walked in, Holden tried to delete files. He clicked frantically, his hands shaking. Agent Morrison grabbed his wrist. "Step away from the computer." "This is my office." "Not anymore, step back." They took his laptop, they took his phone, they opened his filing cabinets and started pulling files, contracts, blueprints, financial records, everything. By 7:30, they'd filled 23 boxes. At 7:45 a.m., Agent Morrison read Holden his rights. "Holden Bradford, you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, perjury, and evidence tampering." They handcuffed him. They walked him through the office past employees who stared in silence, past the elevator down to the lobby where the cameras were waiting. The perp walk. Holden's face was pale, his eyes wild. As they led him out, he turned to the cameras and screamed, "My sister is lying. She's a murderer. This is a setup." The footage went viral within an hour. At 9 a.m., my parents sat in the living room of the Lake Forest house watching the news. Nathan had planted a source inside their household, a housekeeper who kept me updated. She texted me at 9:15. "Patricia is crying. Richard hasn't said a word." At 9:30, she texted again. Patricia just said, "How did this happen?" Richard said, "My God, what if she was telling the truth?" Patricia, what have we done? I stared at the text for a long time. Then I put my phone down. At 11 a.m., I walked into the Bradford and Associates office for the first time in 3 years. The lobby was still a mess. Broken glass from the battering ram. FBI agents moving in and out with boxes. Employees huddled in small groups whispering. When I walked in, the room went silent. They stared. Some looked guilty. Some looked relieved. A few clapped quietly. I didn't acknowledge them. I walked to the elevator and took it to the 34th floor. Holden's office was full of FBI agents. Agent Morrison looked up when I walked in. "Ms. Bradford," she said, "we need you to identify which designs are yours and which were altered." I looked around the room. Blueprints covered the conference table. My work. 3 years of my life. "All of them," I said. "Every original design is mine. Anything that deviates from code or reduces structural capacity, that's Holden." Morrison nodded. "Thank you. We'll need you to sign affidavits for each one." "I'll do it." I spent the next 2 hours going through blueprints, marking each alteration, signing my name. By the time I was done, my hand ached. At 2 p.m., the board convened an emergency meeting. 12 members, 7 in person, 5 on Zoom. Nathan and I sat at one end of the table. Owen sat beside me. Nathan stood and presented a summary of the evidence: forged signatures, embezzled funds, offshore accounts, Vanessa's testimony, Miguel's statement, the forensic report. When he finished, the room was silent. Then Owen stood. He pulled up a slide on the screen, a technical diagram of column B7. My sister's original design specified a W14 by 90 steel beam, Owen said. His voice was steady, controlled. Holden changed it to a W12 by 65. That's a 32% reduction in load-bearing capacity. One of the board members leaned forward. "How do you know Holden made the change?" Owen pulled out his phone and projected a photo onto the screen. A handwritten note. Holden's handwriting. Change B7 to W12 times 65. Save $47,000. "I photographed this 3 years ago," Owen said. "The day after the collapse. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't have proof yet." The room erupted. Board members talked over each other. Someone asked if Owen had more evidence. Someone else asked why he hadn't come forward sooner. Owen waited for them to quiet down. Then he said, "My sister's design was safe. Holden's design killed 3 people, and then he framed her for it." The vote was immediate. Motion to remove Holden Bradford as CEO unanimous. Motion to restore Delaney Bradford's voting shares and board seat 11-1. Motion to refer all findings to federal authorities unanimous. At 4 p.m., I stood in my old office, now Holden's office, and looked out over the city. Nathan came to stand beside me. "You're back." "Not for long," I said. "What?" "This company is tainted. Holden destroyed its reputation. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life rebuilding something that's already dead." "Then what are you going to do?" "Start over. Transfer control to Owen. He deserves it. He's the one who stayed. He's the one who gathered the evidence. Let him run it." Nathan studied me. "And you? I'll design again. Somewhere new, somewhere clean." By 6 p.m., the news had exploded. Every outlet in the country was running the story. Delaney Bradford exonerated, brother arrested. My phone rang 127 times. I turned it off. I sat in the penthouse and watched the sunset. The city glittered below. It looked the same as it had 3 years ago. But I wasn't the same. Nathan poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. "What's next?" I smiled. "Tomorrow we take back the house." He raised an eyebrow. "The Lake Forest house." "It's in my name. Premarital asset. I bought it 10 years ago before I ever met Holden's schemes. My parents moved in when I went to prison. They forgot it was mine." I took a sip of wine. I didn't. 2 moving trucks and a sheriff's SUV pulled up at 2 p.m. Tuesday. I stepped out in a black suit, Nathan beside me, fresh eviction order in hand. I'd imagined this moment every night in prison. The Lake Forest house stood at the end of a long circular driveway. 8,500 square feet of limestone and glass, manicured lawn, fountain in the front yard. The kind of house that said old money even when it wasn't. 2 moving trucks were already parked in the driveway. Deputy Sheriff O'Brien stood on the front steps, clipboard in hand. Neighbors stood on their lawns, phones out filming. My family had already packed. 3 suitcases and 2 duffel bags sat on the front steps. Patricia stood beside them, her hands shaking. Richard stood behind her, his face pale, his jaw tight. Vanessa sat on the stone bench near the door staring at her phone. No one had called Owen yet. Or maybe they had and he hadn't answered. I got out of the car. Nathan followed. We walked up the driveway. Deputy O'Brien nodded at me. "Ms. Bradford." Deputy. He read the eviction order aloud. "By order of the Cook County Circuit Court, Richard and Patricia Bradford are to vacate the premises immediately. Personal belongings only. All property purchased with corporate funds or under investigation for asset forfeiture must remain." Patricia broke first. She dropped the jewelry box she was holding. It clattered on the stone steps. She ran toward me, her arms outstretched. "Delaney, please, this is our home. Think about your father's health. Think about—" I walked straight past her. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I didn't look at her. Patricia collapsed on the steps, sobbing. Richard tried to hold it together. He straightened his shoulders and cleared his throat. "Think about what you're doing. The news, the stock, the family name." I turned to him. My voice was cold. "The news is already full of it. I don't care about the stock. And the family name—" I smiled. "You destroyed that yourself." Richard's face crumpled. Owen's car pulled up 10 minutes later. He got out slowly, his face carefully neutral. He walked to the steps and put his hand on Patricia's shoulder. "Mom," he said quietly, "she's angry. Let her be." Patricia looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. "Owen, talk to her. Make her understand." Owen glanced at me. Our eyes met. There was no warmth in his expression, but there was something else. Solidarity. He turned back to Patricia. "I can try." He walked over to me. He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Delaney, please, calm down. They're still our parents." But his eyes said something different. "You're doing the right thing." Richard grabbed Owen's arm. "Tell her, Owen. Tell her she's being unreasonable." Owen looked at him. Then he looked at the house. Then he looked back at Richard. "You made your choice," Owen said quietly. "You testified against her. You let Holden frame her. You chose him." He pulled his arm free and walked away. Vanessa stood up. She picked up her suitcase, just one, small and black, and walked to the curb. She pulled out her phone and ordered an Uber. Patricia called after her. "Vanessa, where are you going?" Vanessa didn't turn around. Somewhere honest. The Uber arrived 3 minutes later. Vanessa got in and left without looking back. The movers started at 2:30. They walked through the house, loading furniture onto the trucks, sofas, chairs, dining table, gym equipment, art from the walls. Patricia screamed when they took the painting from the living room, a landscape, oil on canvas, her mother's favorite. "That's my mother's painting," she yelled. "You can't take that." Deputy O'Brien checked his clipboard. Purchased in 1994 using a Bradford and Associates corporate American Express card. It's subject to asset forfeiture. But it was a gift. It was purchased with embezzled funds, ma'am. It stays. Patricia sank onto the steps again, her face buried in her hands. At 3 p.m., Richard clutched his chest. He staggered, his face going white. He leaned against the doorframe, breathing hard. I stopped. For the first time since I'd arrived, I hesitated. Deputy O'Brien stepped forward. "Sir, are you okay?" Richard waved him off. "I'm fine, it's just—" He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "It's just what it feels like to be betrayed by your daughter." I stared at him. For a moment, I saw him the way I used to. My father. The man who taught me to draft blueprints. The man who'd told me I could be anything. And then I remembered. I remembered him on the witness stand saying I was reckless. I remembered him telling the jury I'd ignored his warnings. I remembered him choosing Holden over me. My face hardened. "You chose this," I said. I turned and walked back to the house. Behind me, I heard Deputy O'Brien calling an ambulance. I heard Patricia crying. I heard Richard saying he was fine, he didn't need help, he just needed his daughter to stop destroying the family. I didn't look back. By 3:30 p.m., the trucks were loaded. 3 suitcases, 2 duffel bags. That's all they had left. Patricia stood outside the gate, her coat pulled tight against the cold. She called a taxi. Richard stood beside her, silent, staring at the ground. The news vans filmed everything. Dr. Morrison from next door held up his phone. Mrs. Davis stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching. The electronic gate closed with a soft, final click. I stood in the empty house. The walls were bare. The floors were scuffed where the movers had dragged furniture. The air still smelled faintly of my mother's perfume. Owen came to stand beside me. "You okay?" I nodded. He squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing." I didn't answer. Owen left a few minutes later. He had to get back to the office. He was running Bradford and Associates now. The board had voted him in as interim CEO. I stood alone in the foyer. I walked to the wall where the family photos used to hang. Graduation pictures, holiday photos. The 5 of us smiling, pretending we were happy. I took down the last one, my college graduation, and turned it face down against the wall. Through the window, I watched the taxi pull up. I watched my parents get in. I watched it drive away. One tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away immediately. "This is what justice looks like," I said quietly. "It doesn't feel like I thought it would." The headline the next morning, Bradford family evicted from estate. 6 months ago, that would have felt like victory. Now it just felt empty. The trial started in 2 weeks. That's when it would truly end. United States versus Holden Bradford. Federal court. 6 weeks to rewrite 3 years of lies. I sat in the front row every day. I wanted him to see my face. The first trial took my freedom. This one would take his. The Dirksen Federal Building Courtroom, 2505. Floor-to-ceiling wood paneling. High ceilings. American flag behind the judge's bench. The kind of courtroom where federal cases were won and lost. The gallery was packed. Media in the back rows. Victim families in the front. Public observers standing along the walls. Nathan sat beside me, a legal pad on his lap. Judge Walter Harrison presided. 61 years old, silver hair, a reputation for fairness. He'd signed the emergency freeze order back in January. Now he was overseeing the trial that would determine whether Holden Bradford spent the next 25 years in prison. Federal prosecutor Jennifer Walsh stood at the prosecution table. The same woman who'd prosecuted me 3 years ago. The same woman who'd convinced a jury I was guilty. Now she was on my side. The irony wasn't lost on me. Holden sat at the defense table in a gray suit, his face pale, his hands folded. His lawyer, Marcus Reed, was 52, expensive and experienced, but he had a losing hand and he knew it. The first week was jury selection. It took 3 days to seat 12 jurors and 4 alternates. I took notes on each one. An architect, a teacher, a retired firefighter, an accountant, a social worker. The defense tried to strike every architect and engineer from the pool. The judge didn't allow it. On day 4, opening statements began. Jennifer Walsh stood and faced the jury. "This is a case about greed disguised as family loyalty," she said. Her voice was calm, measured. Holden Bradford didn't just cut corners to save money. He sabotaged a construction project, forged his sister's signature, and let 3 men die. And then he sent his sister to prison for it. She pulled up side-by-side blueprints on the screen behind her. My design. Holden's modified version. 3 people are dead. This wasn't an accident. This was calculated cost-cutting, and the defendant knew exactly what he was doing. Marcus Reed stood for the defense. "This is a case about a vengeful sister destroying her brother," he said. "Business decisions are not criminal acts. Delaney Bradford spent 3 years in prison. She's angry. She wants revenge. And she's using the full weight of the federal government to get it." The jury looked at me. I kept my face neutral. Miguel took the stand on Monday morning of the second week. Jennifer Walsh asked him to describe October 15th, 2021. Miguel spoke quietly, his hands folded in his lap. "Mr. Bradford arrived at the site early, 6:30 a.m. He told me he'd made changes to column B7. He said Miss Bradford had approved it. I asked to see the approval in writing. He said, 'Don't question me, I'm a Bradford.' 'What did you do?' I called Ms. Bradford. She arrived at 7:15. She didn't know about the changes. She ordered an evacuation, but it was too late." The cross-examination was brutal. Marcus Reed accused Miguel of lying to save himself. Miguel didn't flinch. "I should have spoken up 3 years ago," Miguel said. "But Mr. Bradford threatened my job. I have 4 kids. I was scared. That doesn't make me a liar. It makes me human." I caught Miguel's eye as he left the stand. I nodded. He nodded back. Douglas Meyer testified on Tuesday. He admitted everything. The $85,000 bribe, the 3 wire transfers, the falsified inspection reports. Jennifer Walsh displayed the bank records on the screen. 3 deposits, March 12th, April 8th, May 20th. "Mr. Bradford told me it was a consulting fee," Douglas said. "He told me Mrs. Bradford knew about the changes. I believed him." Marcus Reed pounced. "You're testifying to get a reduced sentence, aren't you?" "Yes. So why should the jury believe you?" Douglas looked at the jury. "Because it's still the truth." By the end of the second week, the prosecution called Dr. Frank Morrison, a structural engineer from MIT, 63 years old, wire-rimmed glasses, 30 years of experience. He was the best expert witness money could buy, and Nathan had hired him. Dr. Morrison walked the jury through my original design. Miss Bradford's specifications called for a W14 by 90 steel beam. This design meets all safety codes. It's excellent work. He pulled up Holden's modified design. Mr. Bradford changed it to a W12 by 65. That's a 32% reduction in load-bearing capacity. A first-year engineering student would know that's dangerous. He played a 3D animation of the collapse. The jury leaned forward, riveted. The column buckled. The beam fell. The floor gave way. 3 men died because Mr. Bradford chose profit over safety, Dr. Morrison said. The defense brought in their own expert. He was weaker, unconvincing. The jury didn't buy it. On Friday afternoon of the third week, the victim families testified. Sarah Mitchell took the stand first. She was 38 years old. She wore a black dress. Her hands shook as she gripped the microphone. "My husband Robert died because of greed," she said. Her voice broke. "Our daughter was 3 years old. She doesn't remember what her daddy's face looks like. She asks me sometimes. I show her pictures, but it's not the same." She looked at Holden. "You took him from us, for money." James Tucker's mother testified next. "My son was 33, she said. He was about to propose. His girlfriend still has the ring. She keeps it in a box. She can't bring herself to look at it." David Rodriguez's sister testified last. "My brother was a supervisor," she said. "He died trying to save the other men. He wasn't even supposed to be there that day. He came in early because he cared." The courtroom was silent. Holden stared at the table. He didn't look up. He didn't meet their eyes. I cried quietly. It was the first time anyone had seen me cry since the trial began. Nathan handed me a tissue. I wiped my eyes and kept watching. Week 4 was Vanessa. Week 5, Owen would present the technical evidence. But week 5 was what I was waiting for. Week 5, Holden would take the stand. Finally, I'd get to hear him explain how he justified 3 lives. Week 4. Vanessa Bradford took the stand. Holden's face went white. Vanessa wasn't just going to testify about embezzlement. She was about to reveal the murder conspiracy. Every word she spoke buried him deeper. Vanessa took the stand on Monday morning of week 4. She wore a plain gray dress, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She didn't look at Holden. She looked at the jury. Jennifer Walsh stood. Ms. Bradford, what was your role in this conspiracy? Vanessa's voice was steady. I helped my husband embezzle $19.7 million. I forged contractor invoices. I falsified financial records. And I helped frame my sister-in-law. Walsh displayed the emails on the screen, 156 of them. Vanessa walked the jury through each step of the plan, the offshore accounts, the shell companies in the Cayman Islands, the fabricated paper trail. Then Walsh pulled up an email dated 2 months before the collapse. From Vanessa Bradford to Holden Bradford subject problem. We need to get rid of Delaney. She'll never give up control. She's too stubborn. We need another option. Holden's reply, working on it, trust me. The courtroom went silent. Marcus Reed stood for cross-examination. You're testifying to save yourself, aren't you? Yes. You discovered your husband was cheating. This is revenge, isn't it? Vanessa looked at him. Both. But it doesn't make the truth less true. The jury believed her. Owen testified on Tuesday of week 5. He wore a dark suit. His hands were steady as he was sworn in, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Jennifer Walsh asked him to walk through the technical evidence, the blueprint modifications, the steel beam specifications. Owen explained it all clearly, methodically, and then Walsh asked, "When did you first suspect your brother?" Owen paused. 3 weeks before the collapse. Why? Owen pulled out a document. I found Holden's calendar. He'd scheduled a site inspection for 7:30 a.m. on October 15th, 2021. Walsh leaned forward. What's significant about that? Holden called my sister at 6:47 a.m. that morning, told her there was a problem with column B7. She arrived at the site at 7:15. The collapse happened at 7:43. The courtroom was dead silent. Mr. Bradford, Walsh said slowly, are you saying my brother expected my sister to be standing near column B7 when it collapsed? Owen's voice cracked. He tried to kill her. When she survived, plan B was to frame her. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. Walsh displayed another document. Handwritten notes in Holden's handwriting. Call D to site early. Make sure at B7. If accident happens, problem solved. Marcus Reed shot to his feet. Objection speculation. This is overruled, Judge Harrison said. The witness may continue. I sat frozen in my seat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My brother had tried to kill me. Nathan put his hand on my shoulder. I was shaking. Holden took the stand on Thursday. It was a desperate move. Marcus Reed had advised against it, but Holden insisted. Reed asked the scripted questions. Did you modify the design? I optimized it. I'm a licensed architect. Did you intend to harm your sister? Absolutely not. Owen is lying. He's always been jealous. Jennifer Walsh stood for cross-examination. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Mr. Bradford explained this note, call D to site early. Holden hesitated. D could be anyone. Douglas, the inspector, for example, at 6:47 a.m. before work hours. I don't remember. You don't remember trying to kill your sister. I didn't try to kill anyone. But you did try to frame her. Holden's face went red. She was taking everything. The company should have been mine. My father built it. I deserved it. The courtroom went silent. Marcus Reed dropped his head into his hands. Holden realized what he'd said. He tried to backtrack. I didn't mean... But it was too late. Closing arguments came on Friday of week 6. Jennifer Walsh stood. Holden Bradford didn't just cut corners. He cut lives short. 3 men. And he intended to make his sister the 4th. She pointed at Holden. Greed, envy, attempted murder, fraud, all proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Marcus Reed's closing was weak. He talked about overreach, about vindictiveness, about reasonable doubt. The jury didn't buy it. The jury deliberated for 8 hours over 2 days. I waited in the witness room. Nathan sat beside me. No matter what happens, the truth is out. I need a conviction, I said. He has to be found guilty. Nathan nodded. He will be. On Wednesday afternoon, the bailiff called us back. The courtroom was packed. Victim families in the front rows, media in the back. Holden sat at the defense table, his face pale. Judge Harrison entered. We stood. Has the jury reached a verdict? Harrison asked. The 4 persons stood. "We have your honor." The clerk handed the verdict forms to the judge. Harrison read them silently. His face didn't change. "The defendant will rise." Holden stood. His hands were shaking. "Count 1, involuntary manslaughter in the deaths of Robert Mitchell, James Tucker, and David Rodriguez. How do you find guilty? Count 2, wire fraud. How do you find guilty? Count 3, embezzlement. How do you find guilty? Count 4, attempted murder. How do you find guilty?" The courtroom exploded. Families cried and hugged each other. Reporters rushed for the doors. Holden collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands. I closed my eyes. Tears streamed down my face. Nathan squeezed my hand. "It's over." Judge Harrison banged his gavel. "Order. Sentencing will take place in 3 weeks, December 18th. The defendant is remanded into custody." 2 marshals handcuffed Holden and led him out of the courtroom. He didn't look at me. I walked out of the courthouse into the cold December air. Nathan walked beside me. Media swarmed us, shouting questions. Nathan waved them off. And then I saw them, my parents, standing beside a car at the curb, waiting. My mother took 1 step forward. For the first time in 3 years, I stopped. Sentencing was December 18th. The judge didn't waste words. "Mr. Bradford, you have betrayed every oath you ever swore." This was the last time I'd see Holden as anything resembling free. The next time would be behind bars. The courtroom was packed one final time, December 18th. Cold outside, the kind of Chicago winter cold that seeped into your bones. The holidays were coming, Christmas lights strung up on Michigan Avenue, shoppers crowding the sidewalks. But there was no festive feeling in this room. I arrived with Nathan and Owen. We sat in the front row. My parents stood in the back, separated from us by rows of wooden benches and 3 years of betrayal. They were out on bail awaiting their own sentencing hearing next month. Holden was led in by 2 federal marshals. He wore an orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed in front of him. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, his shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than I remembered. Diminished. He didn't look at me. Judge Harrison entered. We stood. "Be seated." The room settled into silence, the kind of silence that felt heavy final. Judge Harrison looked at the victim families. "The court will now hear impact statements." Sarah Mitchell went first. She stood at the lectern, her hands gripping the edges. She wore a black dress. Her daughter, now 4 years old, sat in the front row with Sarah's mother. 25 years won't bring my husband back," she said. Her voice was steady, practiced. She'd probably rehearsed this 100 times. "But my daughter will know that justice exists, that people who choose greed over human life will be held accountable. Robert was a good man. He deserved better. We all did." I felt something tighten in my chest. 3 years ago, I'd sat in a courtroom and heard a prosecutor say I was responsible for Robert's death. Now I was watching his widow speak the truth. James Tucker's mother spoke next. She was 72 years old, her hair white, her hands shaking as she gripped a piece of paper. "My son was 33, she said. Her voice trembled. "He was about to propose. His girlfriend still has the ring. She keeps it in a box because she can't bear to look at it. James was kind. He was loved. And you," she looked at Holden, "you took him from us for money. I hope prison teaches you the value of my son's life." David Rodriguez's sister was last. She was in her late 30s, wearing a navy suit, her jaw set. "My brother didn't just die that day," she said. "He was trying to save the others when the beam came down. He died a hero. But you..." She pointed at Holden. "You didn't just kill 3 people. You killed the futures they would have built, the families they would have had, the lives they would have touched. That's what I'll never forgive." She sat down. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of someone crying quietly in the back. Judge Harrison looked at me. "Ms. Bradford, you have the right to make a statement." I stood. My legs felt unsteady. I walked to the lectern. I didn't bring notes. I'd spent a year thinking about what I'd say, a year in meetings with Nathan and Doctor, Cartwright processing everything that had happened, a year learning to separate justice from revenge. "Holden stole 3 years of my life," I said. But it was more than that. He stole my family, my trust, my sense of safety in the world. He tried to kill me. And when that failed, he sent me to prison for crimes he committed. I looked at Holden. He stared at the table. His lawyer, Marcus Reed, sat beside him, looking exhausted. For a long time, I wanted revenge, I said. I wanted him to suffer the way I suffered, but I don't want that anymore. I want accountability. I want these families to have peace. I want Holden to spend every single day in prison knowing that he did this to himself, that every choice he made, every lie, every betrayal, every act of greed led him here. I paused, and I want him to know that I survived, that I rebuilt my life, that he didn't break me. I sat down. Holden still didn't look at me, but I saw his hands. They were shaking. Judge Harrison opened the sentencing file. He adjusted his glasses and looked at Holden. "Mr. Holden Bradford," he said, "you are a licensed architect. You took an oath to protect public safety. You violated that oath in the worst way imaginable. 3 men are dead because you chose profit over human life. Your sister spent 3 years in prison for your crimes. You attempted to murder her. You embezzled nearly $20 million. You lied under oath. You showed no remorse." He paused. The courtroom was silent. "This court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison. You are not eligible for parole for 17 years. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $19.7 million for embezzlement and $11.4 million to Ms. Delaney Bradford for wrongful imprisonment." Holden's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we respectfully request leniency based on..." Denied. The defendant is remanded into custody. 2 marshals stepped forward. They took Holden by the arms. He stood slowly, his movements stiff. He looked at the judge. Then for the first time that day, he looked at me. Our eyes met. I didn't say anything. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just looked at him. And he looked away. He was led out of the courtroom. The door closed behind him with a heavy final sound. Judge Harrison continued. "Vanessa Bradford, in recognition of your substantial cooperation with federal authorities, this court sentences you to 5 years in federal prison. You will be eligible for parole in 3 years." Vanessa stood. She nodded once. She was led out without looking at anyone. "Richard and Patricia Bradford, you are each sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for perjury and obstruction of justice. You will surrender to the Bureau of Prisons in 30 days. My parents didn't move. My mother was crying, her face buried in her hands. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. "Douglas Meyer, 3 years in federal prison. You are permanently barred from working in public works inspection." Douglas nodded. He was led away. Judge Harrison closed the file. "This court is adjourned." The gavel came down. Outside, the December wind cut through my coat. Nathan and Owen walked beside me. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. I didn't stop. I didn't answer. And then I saw them. My parents standing near the curb beside a black sedan. Patricia stepped forward. Her face was red, her eyes swollen. "Delaney, please. It was a terrible mistake. We didn't know he was lying. Please, can we... You had 3 years to believe me," I said. My voice was calm, firm. I'd practiced this too. You had 3 years to visit me, to ask questions, to doubt him. You chose not to. You chose him. That choice is something you have to live with forever. Richard stepped forward. "I'm sorry, we were wrong. Can we talk? Please." I looked at him, at both of them. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just empty space where my parents used to be. "No," I said. I walked past them. Owen and Nathan followed. Nathan glanced at me. "You okay?" "I will be." 2 days later, I sat in a conference room at Nathan's law office. Owen sat across from me, a stack of transfer documents between us. "Bradford and Associates is yours, Owen," I said. I signed the final page and slid the documents across the table. Owen looked at the papers. "You're sure about this? I'm going to build something new, something that's mine, something clean. You deserve this company. You stayed when everyone else left. You fought when no one else would. Make it right." Owen stood and walked around the table. He hugged me. It was rare. Owen wasn't the hugging type. Neither was I. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Take care of it," I said. That night, I sat alone in the penthouse and watched the evening news. Bradford sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Footage of Holden being led out of the courthouse in handcuffs. Footage of me walking past my parents without stopping. I turned off the TV. I sat in the dark and stared out at the city. The lights of Chicago stretched out below me. The river glittered. The buildings I designed still stood. It was over. So why didn't it feel like it had ended? 1 year later, I received a visitation request from FCY Greenville, South Carolina. Prisoner 87456-024, Holden Bradford. I looked at the form for 3 days. I put it on my kitchen counter. I picked it up. I put it down. I asked Nathan what he thought. He said it was my choice. On the third day, I picked up a pen. I checked the box. Yes, the visitation room at FCY Greenville wasn't like Lincoln. Cleaner, quieter, but still a cage. 1 year later, I am a different person. Healed, but still scarred. I came here to close everything a real closure. My new office sits on the 3rd floor of an old brick building in River North. The sign outside reads, Bradford Design Studio. Smaller, cleaner, independent. 8 employees, boutique projects. On the wall behind my desk hangs the Rebuilding Chicago Architectural Foundation award I received last month. Nathan sent a card, "You deserve this," and more. Owen sent white tulips not for a funeral, but for a new beginning. I am happy at my drafting table, designing again, creating something from nothing. This time no one can take it away. The decision to visit Holden came after a week of deliberation. Nathan said, "You don't have to do this." I replied, "I know. I need closure. Real closure." I drove 2 hours south from Chicago to Pekin, Illinois on a December morning. December again, full circle. The sky was overcast, cold wind sweeping across the empty parking lot. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing deeply. The waiting room was small, fluorescent lights glaring. Metal detector, ID check, visitor log. The guard, a large black woman with short gray hair, called my name, Hayes Delaney. I stood. Prisoner 87456-024, Station 7. I walked in. Memories of Lincoln flooded back, the smell of bleach, the clang of keys, the hollow eyes of those who had lost hope. But this time, I was a visitor. This time, I could walk out. The visitation room at FCI Pekin wasn't like Lincoln. Cleaner, quieter, but still a cage. The visitation room had 2 rows of seats, thick glass old phones mounted on the wall. I sat at Station 7, waited. The door on the other side opened. Holden walked in. I almost didn't recognize him. The beige federal uniform hung loose on his frame. He had lost 33 pounds, cheeks, sunken shoulders, bony. Gray streaked his temples. His hands trembled as he sat down and picked up the phone. He couldn't look me in the eye. "You came." His voice was hoarse. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," I said. Silence. Holden swallowed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." He looked down at his hands, the knuckles that once wore a diamond ring, now bare and skeletal. "Delaney, I'm sorry. I know it's never enough. Sorry will never be enough." I said nothing, just waited. "I've had a year to think, really think." He inhaled shakily. "I was jealous. Since we were kids, you were always smarter, more talented. Dad wanted a son who could lead, but you were better. I couldn't accept it. Mom and Dad's expectations broke something in me." His voice cracked. "That's not an excuse. I killed 3 people. I tried to kill you." He cried. "I destroyed our family. I destroyed you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to hear me say it. I'm sorry. Truly sorry." I sat in silence for a long time, watching him cry, watching the glass between us. I didn't feel pity, didn't feel anger, just empty. "Holden," I said, voice calm. "I came to tell you one thing." He looked up, eyes red. "There will be no forgiveness, not now, not ever." He froze. "You didn't just take 3 years," I continued. "You took my ability to have children." Holden looked up, stunned. "What?" "Stress trauma doctors confirmed it. Prison destroyed that possibility." I stared into his eyes. "You took my family, my company, my freedom, my future. You did it while looking me in the eye and smiling." Holden shook his head, tears falling. I didn't know. I'm not forgiving you." I cut him off. Forgiveness is for people who make mistakes. You made choices, calculated, deliberate choices. You chose greed over integrity, power over family, ego over 3 human lives. I leaned forward, voice cold as ice. Choices have consequences. 25 years here is your consequence. Never forgiving you is mine. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Do you hate me? I considered it. Then spoke honestly. No, I don't hate you anymore. Hate requires care. I don't care about you anymore. You're a stranger who happens to share my DNA. That's all. I paused. The brother I thought I had never existed. He exhaled, trembling. Mom and Dad ask about you in every letter. I smiled coldly. Let me be clear, Richard and Patricia Bradford are no longer my parents. I legally changed my name 6 months ago. I'm Delaney Hayes now, my mother's maiden name. I stopped. The Bradford family ends with you in prison. Owen keeps the company name for business continuity. That's the only Bradford legacy left. I stood. Goodbye, Holden. This is the last time we speak. Wait! He stood abruptly, pressing the phone to his ear. Are you happy? I considered it. I'm building something new, clean. Mine built on truth instead of lies. So yes, I'm getting there. He nodded, tears streaming. I'm glad. You deserve to be happy. I know, I said. Then I hung up. Holden pressed his palm against the glass mouth open. I didn't hesitate. Walked straight out. The guard held the door. Will you be back? Never, I said. Driving back to Chicago, my phone rang. Owen. How did it go? He asked gently. Exactly as I needed. He was quiet for a moment. Bradford and Associates just closed the Millennium Tower contract. $180 million. Biggest yet. I smiled. You did it, Owen. I'm proud of you. Me too, he said. My life now looks like this. Bradford Design Studio. 8 employees. Boutique projects. Private homes. Small shops. Small offices. No skyscrapers. No pressure. No heavy Bradford name on my shoulders. Recently, we designed a low-income housing project on the South Side Pilsen, where Miguel Santos lived. The project honors the 3 men who died because of Holden's greed, Robert James David. That's how I give back. I'm dating Daniel, a structural engineer I met at a conference last month. He's kind, patient, not rushing. We haven't talked about the future, but maybe that's okay. I go to therapy every week. Dr. Mitchell says I've made great progress. She asked how I felt about seeing Holden today. I said, relieved. I don't contact my parents. They tried twice through Owen. I declined both. Some bridges stay burned. Owen visits once a month. We have dinner, laugh talk about design. He doesn't ask about family. He understands. People ask if I regret not forgiving. They say forgiveness is for yourself, not them. But I disagree. Refusing forgiveness is self-protection. It's declaring what you did is unforgivable. It's choosing to protect what's left of me. Some wounds don't heal, they scar. Some debts can't be repaid. And some people never deserve forgiveness. Tonight I sit at my drafting table. New Project Community Center in Pilsen, a place for children, families, those who need safe shelter. I want it flooded with light. I want it to be a place of hope. Working late, the city lights twinkling outside my window. The Chicago skyline stretches out shimmering like a galaxy. My phone rings. Owen. Just checking. You okay? I'm okay, really okay. Good, love you. Love you too. Hang up. Back to drawing. The camera pulls away Chicago skyline, me drawing a woman once destroyed, now rebuilding herself one line at a time. Some losses are permanent. Some decisions define us forever. But survival, real survival, means deciding who gets to stay in your life and who doesn't, and living with that decision without apologizing to anyone. And to you listening to this story, remember this family betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's knife. I learned that the hard way. 3 times I prayed to God in that prison cell, once on day 1, crying into my pillow. Once on day 547, when I thought I couldn't take another breath. And once on day 1094, asking not for rescue, but for strength. God didn't answer with miracles. He answered by giving me the will to survive. Family revenge is a double-edged sword. I got my justice. Holden is behind bars. My parents lost everything. But the cost I lost the family I thought I had. Was it worth it? Yes, because the truth mattered more than the lie of family loyalty. Here's my advice: don't be like me. Don't wait 3 years in silence. Don't let betrayal fester. Speak up early. Set boundaries hard. Walk away from people who choose greed over integrity, even if they share your blood. Forgiveness is optional. Self-protection is not. I spent 1,095 days planning family revenge because I had nothing else. You don't have to. Learn from my mistakes, trust slowly, verify always, and never let anyone, family, or not steal your voice. One more thing family betrayal taught me: that family isn't DNA. It's loyalty. It's Owen who risked everything. It's Rosa who had my back. It's Nathan who believed me when no one else did. Build your family from people who choose you every day. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own boundaries, your own family, your own fight, leave a comment below. Tell me, would you forgive or would you walk away? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more raw, real, powerful stories about survival justice and second chances, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because the next story, it's even bigger. Thank you for staying until the end. I know this was heavy, I know it was long, but you stuck with me. That means something. A word of caution before we go: the stories ahead contain fictionalized elements crafted for educational and reflective purposes. If intense themes of betrayal, legal battles, or family conflict aren't for you, feel free to explore other content that better suits your needs. Take care of yourself first. Until next time, stay strong, stay honest, and never apologize for protecting your peace.